My name is Rob Newbold. I'm president of the Extreme Event Solutions team at SIRC. I think catastrophe models are as valuable as perhaps they've ever been in the global insurance and reinsurance markets. Certainly there's been no shortage of catastrophe loss activity over the last decade. We put out every year a report on global modeled losses. This year we have that number at $151 billion globally across all perils. And that looks across not only the United States, but APAC, MENA, all the areas you referenced. Notably for this part of the world, we're investing in many different perils. Notably we have Indonesian and Malaysian flood model coming out in 2025 and an update to our Australian bushfire model. So we continue to invest because we believe these perils are increasingly important to help quantify the risk that informs reinsurance placements. The peril that we've been talking about are so-called frequency perils. I think they've sometimes been labeled as secondary perils, but given the impact these risks have had globally, they're anything but secondary. In the United States, we had nearly $60 billion of severe convective storm loss in 2023. Hail is increasingly risky in Japan. Of course, we have flooding risk around the entire world. In that $151 billion I mentioned to you, nearly 50% comes from severe convective storms, wildfires, and floods. The biggest challenge for the reinsurance market is understanding how to quantify those risks. I think historically reinsurance has been focused on more tail perils, hurricanes and earthquakes, but notably when you're looking at these lower attaching risks, it's important for the market to know that tools exist to help them quantify it on a global scale and perhaps bake that into their reinsurance pricing. It's not just technology, it's data. Data is increasingly important, and what we see is sometimes the modeling is innovating at a faster pace than the data that goes into the models for risk assessment. The quality and granularity of exposure data to model cat risk is so important, as is so having globally open exposure data formats. From our perspective, we need to continue to innovate and invest in these models to have a near-present view of climate risk. The climate is most assuredly changing. The world is getting more warm, the world is getting more wet, and that has a direct impact on cat risk from all sorts of different perils. The innovations from our part are to bring those to market as quickly as we can and help the global market take those into account. Depends on the region of the world. I think obviously in cat-impacted regions you may have a more difficult cat renewal than perhaps in past years. But again, from our perspective, our value in this equation is to provide tools to help both sides of the equation quantify that risk, to be able to see what perhaps loss-impacted programs would look like if you take into account future views of cat and how different types of construction, as you referenced, will be impacting those views of risk. So it really depends on the perils, the loss impact, and the region.